We ready?
We are rolling.
Most people don't dream of being on the radio. And why would you? It's kind of a ridiculous job. But I bet you have some sort of dream, and you might even think it's so far off in a land far, far away that you could never get there. And I thought that too about radio. So I don't quite know why I fell in love with the radio, but that was my dream. And so we probably have something in common there. Both have dreams, and we want to know, is there a way to actually get there? And the world usually tells us no, because it seems too hard, and it is hard. But there is a way. People have asked me so many times, why radio? I think it started because my dad was a contractor, still is, and he made me work with him for a couple summers. And it was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. You had to use hammers, and if you miss, your finger bleeds. Had to like pick up windows, bring them into houses, rip windows out of people's houses. I mean, have you ever thought about what it would take to rip a window out of your house? It's a lot of energy. And so when I was thinking, what do I want to do with my life every day? I looked over to the radio and I realized, well, I really love listening to this thing. How cool would it be to be inside of that thing and not on a construction site? I think it was survival, really. I just realized if I'm gonna tell the story of how I started in radio, it should probably be where it all started. Yeah, that's a better idea. You down for a drive?
Let's do it.
I know exactly where we need to start this. You'd think if I'm gonna make this really intense video blog, I'd have filled up the car with gas. I forgot to do it. Sorry for the delay. I know we usually like fast-paced social media videos, but this, I just need a slight break. There's still some trust in humanity, and this is a sign of it right here. It's amazing that we're trusted to pump gas. How you doing? Yep. Everything's on YouTube, I know. Everything's on social media. You can't even pump gas without filming it for something. Oh, there you go. Ah! Look at this. It's broken. Let's go to New Jersey. When I was about 13 years old, I fell in love with listening to the radio, and I would tape the radio. I'd get up early before school just to listen to my favorite show, and then I'd throw a cassette tape in, run to school with my Walkman on, try and listen in class, get in trouble, run home, listen to the rest of the tape, and it was just the coolest thing. By the time I was 16 years old, I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to do this professionally, but I have no idea how to get into the radio business. So I asked a bunch of people, and one person gave me the brilliant advice to call every local college radio station near the area where I grew up. And I did. I called about 20 stations that I could find. One of them got back to me, and I'm sitting in it right now. That was 89.1 WFTU. It's an amazing college radio station that's housed on the campus of Fairleigh Dickinson University. I got a phone call from a guy named Carl, and he left a message from my mom. And he was like, we got a message from TJ, and sure, we'd love to talk to him. And so I went in for an interview. My mom was there with me. And he said, hey, we're actually looking for someone to run our public affairs programs on Sunday morning. So that turned into my mom waking up with me before I even had my driver's license at 4 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And we would get in the car. She would drop me off here at WFTU at 5 a.m. I would stay until 10 a.m. when my shift was done. My mom would pick me up. And then I started getting bold. And I started asking the people who were here, hey, can I stay later? And they're like, yeah, sure, if you want to. Then I started getting dropped off at 5 in the morning, and my mom would pick me up at 5 at night. And so I would hang out all day long, and I was playing with this same board. By the way, this is the same board that was here when I was here over 20 years ago. And it was so cool because the guy who ran this place, he was a New York City radio veteran. He had worked in production rooms for so many years, and he was my go-to guy who I could ask questions to. And at one point, they actually gave me a key to the place. What? They're giving me a key to this place? It was a miracle. And so, come my senior year of high school, I'm sitting down with a guidance counselor, and she says, TJ, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, actually, I'm already doing it. I'm working at this college radio station, WFDU. She was like, what? How did you get in there? I said, I just made a phone call. And she was like, that's amazing. And she said, I really want to support you in this. Let's arrange your schedule so you can have a 7th period lunch and an 8th period study, and you can leave and go to the radio station every day after your 6th period. Here they were very generous with their scheduling. I started cutting out of class because I wanted to be here more. So somebody wouldn't be able to host the morning show here at WFDU, so I'd say, can I fill in? and they actually let me fill in. So I started cutting out of class, and at one point, the attendance taker at my high school happened to be listening to the radio on the way to school, and he heard me on the radio. He called up my mom, he knew her, and was like, "Hey, Mrs. T, what's going on here? Why is TJ on the radio? He's supposed to be in class right now." My mom was like, "I don't know what's going on. He's hanging out at that radio station." All of this time spent at this radio station set me up for a voicemail we got right here during my senior year of high school. It was a voicemail from the executive producer of Elvis Duran in the Morning Show, David Brody. He called and he said, "We're looking to put together an internship program. Do you have any students who might want to intern at Z100 in New York?" So I get a phone call from Duff and he says, "Hey, you've got an interview at Z100. I said, "What, really?" And he said, "Yeah, go in, try and get the internship." Here we are. All right. Whoa. The problem was, I had no idea how to get to Jersey City. And so I walked into the building an hour late for my interview. And there was a very gracious David Brody. It was that building right there that we were in. "Don't worry about it, we'll still do the interview." And I was like, "I'm really sorry, I had no idea how to get here." And we sit down for the interview, and I thought it went great, and then I never heard back. I'd call them, leave a message. "Did you get an intern yet?" Wouldn't hear back. I'd call them again. "Hey, it's TJ, wondering whatever happened with the internship program." That was very annoying. No response. Finally, I get a phone call back, and it's Dave Brody. "TJ, you're very persistent. Normally we would not hire someone your age. You're 17, but it sounds like you can get college credit, and it's legit, so you've got the gig." What? This is so exciting! And there it was. I was an intern on Elvis Duran in the Morning Show, and that turned into 3 semesters on Elvis's show. It was dreamy. I thought I loved radio the most you could, but after working in this building, it was like a whole new level. In 2003, I became an assistant producer on the show, and then in 2004, they hired me full-time to be a part of the production staff. And then Elvis's show started getting syndicated and picking up markets and cities all over the nation. There was one day in that span where Elvis sat me down in his office, and he was like, "TJ, what do you really want to do? Like, you're doing a lot of things here at the station, but what do you really want to do?" And I mustered up the courage to say, "Well, I really want to host a morning show." And I had no idea what he was going to say, and he didn't even skip a beat. He goes, "Oh, you could totally do that, and here's why." And he started giving me reasons of why I could do a morning show. I didn't even know I could do a morning show. And he took that moment to really encourage me, and so I asked him, I said, "Well, what's the next step, Elvis?" And he said, "Well, why don't you finish your work when you come in the morning, and then when you're done, come hang out in the studio." So I started doing that. And I went in with a notebook and I started taking notes. I was like, "All right, Elvis, why did you cut off that caller at this time?" And then after the show, I would go to his door and knock on it and say, "Hey, Elvis, why did you cut off this caller at this time?" And he would actually take the time to talk to me about radio philosophy and why he was doing what he was doing. And then one day, Elvis let the team know, "Hey, we're actually moving out of this building and we're moving our stuff to New York." To this building right here. All the while, Elvis' show was growing and growing and growing. He kept adding affiliates to all these different cities, and it was a dream. It was an absolute dream to be a part of it. But Elvis convinced me that I could do a morning show, and that was still rattling around in my head. Turns out there was a little radio station in Georgia, about an hour and a half out of Atlanta. I went down for an interview, and they offered me the morning show. I couldn't believe it. My first real opportunity to do a morning show. And so I took that offer, I went back to Elvis, we had lunch right down the street over here, and I said, "Elvis, is this what I need to do to host a morning show? Do I need to accept this offer?" "Well, we could do that, or I'm planning to open up another co-host role on the show. If you would like that, I'd love to give that to you." And I said, "Well, which one should I do if I want to host a morning show?" And he said, "Well, I'd recommend staying here." And I said, "Okay." Couldn't believe it. I went in every day, couldn't believe this was real life. I kept thinking I'd wake up from this wild dream that I was having. And then, like after doing it for a little while, thinking about it and talking it over with some people, I realized, well, this is a decision I have to make. I either can stay in this amazing ecosystem here with Elvis at Z100, or I gotta put my money where my mouth is. And I have to at least try to host my own morning show. That's cold. Now, if we're gonna tell the story of Boston, we should probably go to Boston. You have time to hop on a flight?
What? Right now?
We have to return to the gate, unfortunately. And I've never seen this before. This was new to me, but do apologize for this delay.
National grounding? Deplaning.
Make sure if you were sleeping at the time I made the announcement, make sure you have all of your personal belongings, please. Thank you.
Somebody was sleeping during that announcement? That's gotta be sad. You think you're in Boston right now. You wake up and you're still in Philly. 2 hours until the next update. Gotta bail. That was not the sign I was expecting to see when I got off the plane. You wanna drive?
To Boston?
We're gonna drive up.
Drive up to where?
Boston.
Can you do that in one day?
Probably not. We made it. It was a lot, but we're here. You know what I'm realizing? We might actually have a better view if we turn the camera this way.
Over.
How does that look?
Oh, yeah, no, that looks good.
Let's go with that. It was right around that time that CBS Radio in Boston was switching an oldies format to a different format, and they were looking for a morning show. So I started meeting with some of the people up in Boston, and we were having really great conversations. One thing led to the next, and they offered me the opportunity to take over this morning show on an iconic radio station in Boston. And so now here I was with an offer from Elvis's show and an offer to host my own morning show. And I decided this was my opportunity. If I was gonna host a morning show, I had to jump, I had to do it. Even though things were great in New York, and I loved being in New York, I loved working for Elvis, I just didn't really think I would get another chance like this. So I went to Elvis and actually had lunch with him right at this restaurant over here. And I said, Elvis, I love you, I love working for you, and I know the only reason why I have this opportunity is because of you. But I think I want to take this gig. To his credit, and by the way, I don't think I was right in the way that I did this, but to his credit, he could not have been more gracious about it. He looked at me and he said, I'm so proud of you. And I just thanked him so much, and I kept thanking him to probably an annoying level. I did not stop thanking him for years after that, to a point where he even told me, stop thanking me. And I said, okay, I'll stop thanking you. But I still want to say thank you to him because he really set, hey. So I won't stop doing that, but I started thanking him less. And he said, well, how do you want to exit here? And I said, I'll exit however you want. And he said, well, let's do a couple more weeks on the air, and then that's it. I said, great. So we did that, did our last show here together, and I went off, packed my boxes, and shipped everything up to Boston. When I think back on how I left Elvis's show, I do have this layer of regret that I wish I can undo, and unfortunately I'll never be able to undo it. But I made the decision to go to Boston without asking Elvis first. And it was a disrespectful thing to do. I was so riddled with fear and worry that I wouldn't be able to control my future, which is something I found out you can't really do anyway. I wish that I had the maturity and the confidence to go to Elvis and say, hey, this is something that I want to do, and I would love your blessing on it. I think back on that and I'm like, wow, well, what would have changed that in me? And I thought, oh, well, if I would have read a book about human beings, that's a start. If I would have had mentors that I was talking to regularly, that would have helped. Well, see, I said I would stop thanking him, but I can't thank him enough for being really nice to me, even though I could have handled the exit a lot better. See if I can make a move. Hello. Move his ear. Move his ear. I get up to Boston in early 2013, and I'm thrown into this morning show host position. And I kind of look around and realize, okay, well, this is a lot different than being a co-host. And then I look around again and I realize, well, I don't really fully know what to do here. Is Elvis a magician? He made this look so easy. And then I was having these internal conversations where I'm thinking, when I told Elvis that I was going to go host my own morning show, why didn't he punch me in the face, smack my head into a desk, kick me in the stomach and say, you're not ready for this yet. What are you doing? But then I was like, okay, I gotta figure it out. And so I tried a bunch of things, and I sounded sucky on the radio. I'd listen back to the tape of the show that day, and I'd be like, it's about 8,000 people who do this better than I do. And what eventually started happening was that people who were working at the radio station started slowly coming alongside of me. And we had a consultant who was fantastic on our radio show, and he would say, hey, have you thought about doing things this way? Oh, no, I never really thought about that. Have you thought about creating a segment or telling a story in this way? Oh, no, I hadn't really thought about that. I had a program director who said, hey, I think you need to switch up this segment. And have you thought about creating a new segment that sounds something like this? Oh, no, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, let's try that. And then one of our favorite segments that we had done over all those years was born. And so I started listening to what they were saying, and the show started getting better. I didn't quite realize it at the time, but looking back on it now, I realize that we are meant to do life together. We're not supposed to figure everything out on our own. And the cool thing is that there are a lot of people who are older than us that know what to do because they've been there. Thank God for these other people who came alongside me with patience, and that kept happening over the course of 7 years. I have to say the most pivotal moment in the way that I viewed radio and the power of what radio can do happened in the end of 2018. We had partnered up with a local homeless shelter named Boston Rescue Mission, and I got to know the people there and what they were doing, how they were transforming lives. And we wound up having this sock drive on the show, and people started sending in so many pairs of socks to support this event. Huge carts on wheels of socks started showing up every single day for Boston Rescue Mission. I was so touched by what the power of radio can do, the way a community comes together and supports a cause. That is what radio is all about. And I realized this is why we do radio. This is it, because it's a shared experience that people can come together and make the world a better place. Together, do something that we can't do alone. And then to get to deliver these socks to Boston Rescue Mission with the team that we have, with Lauren, Nick, Matt, Kenny, it was so exciting. And again, I think it all goes back to we're meant to do life together. Early 2020 hits, we're getting ready to renegotiate our deal, and then this weird thing happens. The whole world shuts down. And everyone starts locking themselves in their apartments and their homes, and Boston goes into a lockdown because COVID-19 has hit America. At that time, we didn't really understand the impact of what this was going to do to our world. And so they said, hey, we think you should probably broadcast from home just to be safe. And I'm like, that's fine. You know, we were interviewing doctors on the radio. They were saying, hey, this thing will be gone in no time. Just be careful, wash your hands, sing row, row, row your boat to make sure you really washed them. I didn't get the feeling like this was going to be the world shuts down thing. In April of 2020, we had no choice. Our manager said, you've got to broadcast from home. We can't have anyone at the station except for one board operator. And we go on the radio that first morning where I was at home, everyone was at home, and it actually sounded pretty good. We're like, wow, okay, that worked. And after the show, my phone rings, and it's my local managers in Boston, and they said, hey, we don't want to do this, but we have to terminate the show. And apparently a bunch of other shows across the nation, across multiple companies, were getting terminated. Advertising plummeted when there was no cars on the road. And it was really weird because when they told me that, I instantly felt peace about it. And it didn't make sense, but I felt peace. And I just said, guys, I'm so grateful for the opportunity you gave me. I loved being on the radio in Boston. I love the way that you helped me grow. I'm a different broadcaster today than when I walked into the building. And they said, we'd love for you to do a goodbye show tomorrow if you want to. And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. And so the next morning I went in and we did about a 4-hour show that was filled with only phone calls and a song here and there. But I was shocked that there was no one on the road, and yet the lines were ringing all morning, and it was listeners saying, I can't believe that the show is going off the air. They talked to us about their various connections to the show, and they were sharing stories that I had no memory of, but then they brought it up, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember when you called that time, and it was honestly one of my favorite shows that we did in the full 7 years. At the end of the show, I turned the microphone off in Boston for the last time, I packed up my stuff, started waving goodbye to people, because no one would touch each other. They were all like, we want to give you a hug, but we can't, pandemic. So we're talking across the room, through glass. It's a very awkward goodbye, but to the credit of the company that I worked for, which was Odyssey, they could not have handled our exit in a classier way. So I get home to our apartment in Cambridge that day, and I turn to Jess and say, well, here we go, into the next phase. And I have no idea what it looks like. Thinking back on my time in Boston, it's just such a part of who I am now. We had all of our children here, and I just love the city. For 2.5 years, I was really thinking through, what do I want to do next? Have I done radio? Like, maybe I don't need to do it anymore because I've been doing it for 20 years, sort of seen behind the radio curtain. I had this dream of what it was, and it was really exciting for a long time, but radio and audio and everything in the space that I'm in is changing. There's more audio, more podcasts, more streams than we could have ever fathomed in our wildest dreams when I first started at that very first job, WFDU, at Z100. To me, that wasn't even a possibility. Now here we are in this new radio/audio world, and you can easily think, well, how do I fit into this? This sounds like who needs another show? Don't we have enough shows already? So one night I'm sitting on the couch and I'm talking to my wife Jess about what our future is going to look like, and she opens up her phone and she says, this is the second time this has happened. I said, what happened? She goes, a listener of your radio show offered us money. I said, really? Yeah, they're concerned about us. They want to know if we need any help. And I said, well, that's really kind, and we thanked them, but we were okay. It just dawned on me, well, maybe someone cares about how we're doing. You almost could think well, you're on the radio, you're doing a show, it's sort of a thing in passing where people are listening or half listening. But if people are offering us money because they want to make sure we're okay, that feels like what family does. We should probably make some sort of announcement and just check in and let people know we're doing okay. We had this sign-off show a few weeks ago now, and I was so touched by all the phone calls that came in on that show.
I was literally just, like you said, blown away by the connection that was just so evident in the people that were responding and calling in and talking to you. And I mean, that's what life's about.
We're gonna be hanging out here from time to time. I think we should do this more.
Every night.
It's fun. And I started having a really good time with this freedom, this idea you could just turn a camera on, start making jokes or writing little scripts or bits or whatever it was.
Like when you move up the bass line, makes me feel so fine. Yes.
I started missing audio. Well, why don't we just start doing a podcast? Jess, you may have noticed that I've been preparing to launch a podcast.
I've noticed.
Do you have any interest in being my guest?
Sure.
And so while we were doing this and while we were recording these podcasts, I would be getting these phone calls from really big markets across America saying, hey, TJ, we want to start a morning show. What are you doing? Are you interested? And I would ask them the question, well, what does this staffing look like? What kind of a team are we going to get for this morning show? These were really big cities. And they would say some version of, well, we're going to have a host, you'll have a co-host who does all the social media on the show, and then the worst of what I heard, no offense, was that you will get a shared producer. What is a shared producer? And they said, well, this producer produces 3 different shows at once. I just picture this producer spinning a bunch of plates, running back and forth, doing a backflip into the next show. It's very impressive. So inevitably, all these conversations would fizzle out, and I'd be at peace with that. And then I got a phone call in February of 2022, and it was from a guy that I'd known for about 15 years. And he was a really smart radio guy. And he said, hey, TJ, what are you doing? Where are you? And I said, well, I'm living out in the middle of the country. I look out the window now, and rather than seeing pavement in a city, I see herds of deer chopping wood. And he was like, well, do you even want to be on the radio anymore? Like, what are you up to? And I said, well, I would love to be back in a radio studio. That's still my favorite place to do anything with audio. But I just don't think that there's a place for me. And he said, well, can I share what our vision is? And I said, sure. And he started telling me what they were trying to do. They wanted to build up a new radio show. They didn't want to tear something down. We came to an agreement, and now we're launching a brand new radio show. It's called The TJ Show. We've got some people who really love radio working on it, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited to be back in a radio studio. That's how far I've gotten on my dream so far. But in the beginning of this vlog, I said sharing my story will hopefully help you find parallels that help you achieve your dreams. Or maybe it's just a small piece of getting you there. There are a couple things that run through every element of this story that I just shared that I would consider taking note of. One of them is that we're not meant to do life alone. Being humble enough to accept the help of others is transformative in our walk. When I think back on my career, there were so many people that just helped me navigate the challenges that I had. And in the times where I didn't listen to other people or accept that help, I struggled more. And I'm just so grateful for those people that I've mentioned already, and a couple others that come to mind, including my wife, Jess, and my agent, Heather. And then the part of the story that I believe to be most important through it all, it's something that we can't see. There's something about my entire life that runs through every season of my life, whether it's personally or in my career, that I can't see. And I feel it. Can't see it, but I feel it. If it wasn't for God, I'd have none of this. Good to see you again. Love this market. I had to come back and visit because I love it so much. Absolutely.
You actually missed this place.
I do.
You gotta be out of your mind.
Love it. 6, love it. 7, love it. 8, love it. Highlight of my day. Thank you.
See you guys.
Love
Bye.
you.